Hello, good morning to everyone. So, yes, we already heard yesterday and we heard now that we have a really big need of international corporations. We need a lot of hydrogen alliances to foster and to speed up the international hydrogen community, the scaling up of our international hydrogen community. And so that is what we are discussing now, this morning, and I'm happy to welcome our speakers on the stage, and let me do it in alphabetical order. So first, Dr. Jürgen Friedrich from the Federal Ministry of Economy and Economic Affairs and Climate Action. He's Ministerial Envoy for green hydrogen projects. Good morning, Jürgen.
Morning.
Then we have Charlotte Kirk from Fortescue Future Industries. She's from Science and Technology Europe Department. Good morning, Charlotte. And then we have Maira Kusch from the World Energy Council. She's the head of the German office.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello, Maira. Good morning.
Good morning.
A warm welcome also to Ulrik Olbjørn from Equinor. He's the project director for clean hydrogen to Europe. Good morning.
Thank you.
Ulrik. Last but not least, Farhanja Wahabzada from the Business Alliance on Green Hydrogen. She's the team lead from the GIZ. Good morning, Farhanja. Yes, and as we already heard, we not only need a lot of hydrogen alliances and international cooperation, we also have a big imports demand in Europe and in Germany. So we will start to warm up with two small polls this morning. The first poll, please, is indeed the question from the German side. We heard about import demand. So what percentage of our hydrogen needs in Germany will we have to import 2030 and beyond? So you can use your Slido a little bit to warm up in the morning.
Good.
Yes, yeah, you see, indeed, we are talking at least about 70%, but some expectations are also 80% or more. But we are sure that we need more than 50% of import in Germany. So thank you for that. And the second poll, it's an open question. Let's see, when we talk about international corporations and international agreements, also from the German side, which countries do you think are best suited for an H2 alliance with Germany? So you can name all the countries you think are best for alliances, for agreements. And then we see, yeah, India, Norway, okay. Wait a few seconds, maybe, yeah. Scotland, Norway is very in the center at the moment, so. Yeah, a lot of countries already developed their or launched their strategies. So Norway is really in the focus, yeah. Okay, but we see a lot of countries and there is a lot going on. And that's what we will discuss now, what is already happening and what we can discuss about. Okay, very interesting. So Norway in the center, then we have Chile, Spain, and Netherlands, and then a lot of other countries around. Yes, so let me start with you, Jürgen. So we start from the political government side, Germany, then we go to Europe and to worldwide, and then we come to the business side. Jürgen, so we have first our introduction impulses, so you are the first with your remarks, please.
Thanks a lot and good morning. Glad to be part of this discussion. And we got an excellent introduction by Tekla looking at the European perspective. And yes, we are, I think, all fully aware that Europe is committed to net zero. We have one common goal for all European nations. However, the path to this kind of transition, fundamental transition of the energy sector of these economies is very different. Comparing Denmark with Hungary, we have nations who still stick to nuclear energy. Other nations are still relying on coal mining. As a former mining engineer, I saddened to say that it's not a sustainable technology any longer. And others rely, for the time being at least, on gas supplies from Russia. This is just not to comment on these different approaches, but just to be aware that energy transition in Europe is a very different development in each respective nation. In Germany, I just to briefly would outline our challenges as especially important for an industrialized nation. We still have a fairly high level of industrial production, and we would like to stick to that and stay competitive. I think this is a key question, how to make sure that we stay looking at energy prices competitive. Germany phased out just recently nuclear energy. We're phasing out coal mining, and we're going to phase out fossil fuels in the energy sector in the long run. And for sure, there are no energy supplies from Russia any longer relevant for the German market. So, looking at Germany, we need green molecules in every shape, form, from as many countries as possible. And this is why in our national hydrogen strategy, there will be an important element looking at providing the right framework for imports, which have to cover at least 60, maybe 70% of our domestic demand for hydrogen in 2030. And this is why we are strongly working and keenly working on improving our energy cooperation with as many nations as possible. And this is why our discussion today is so relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen, for your intro. Then we will continue with Maira. With your intro statement, please. Maira.
Yes, thank you very much, also for the kind introduction. My name is Maira Kusch. I'm head of office at the World Energy Council Germany. And the World Energy Council Germany is a German member committee of the World Energy Council. And as World Energy Council, we try to bring the global perspective into the national debate. And in that sense, hydrogen has been a big topic for us for a couple of years, as it has become really a global priority, not just in the European Union, but really on a global level. Many countries around the world, like Germany, have published their own national hydrogen strategies. And we've also seen a growing number of bilateral and even regional partnerships developing all over the world. However, we've seen in the last couple of years, and it has been mentioned before in Tekla's introduction, that there are still a number of obstacles on our way to really global market for hydrogen. And international cooperation, international partnerships can be a way to overcome them. And to give a very basic example, we still have a huge lack of infrastructure. Infrastructure for the transport, for the production, for the use, and also for the import of hydrogen. And if we just have a look at this, well, not so small part, but part of the hydrogen market, infrastructure is very complex because it includes the whole value chain. For example, we need infrastructure to produce hydrogen, and depending on the color or the characteristic of hydrogen, we need either plants for the production of renewable energies and also electrolyzers. If we're talking about blue hydrogen, we also need infrastructure for the capture and storage of CO2. And then we also need transport infrastructure like pipelines to get the produced hydrogen to the consumer in the end. And also, if we're talking about hydrogen storage, which is a way to store electricity in times when it's not needed, for example, then we also need storage infrastructure. And also a big topic for Germany, hydrogen imports, we've just heard it. We need terminals, we need pipelines. So it's a really complex topic that requires huge investments and, of course, huge risk associated with those investments. In a study of the World Energy Council Europe, we found that the overall cost of partnering countries to export hydrogen to the European Union by 2050 would be 760 billion euros. 760 billion euros. So that is quite a number. And so hydrogen partnerships can be a way to, again, reduce the risk and also jointly develop this infrastructure. So that is a very basic example, but we can also see it in many other areas. So hydrogen partnership can be very positive for both sides, I think, both for importers, both for exporters, to share risk and costs in the end. That is a very basic introduction. I think we can dig deeper into the nature of partnerships later.
Thank you, Maira. So let's go to GIZ. Let's hear your intro statement, Farhanja.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Farhanja, and I'm heading the Business Alliance on Green Hydrogen, which is a project commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development and implemented by GIZ. And when it was founded in 2019, we aimed at contributing and support the market ramp-up of green hydrogen in developing and emerging countries. I've seen just now that some of those countries were mentioned here as well. And it's not about only the market ramp-up, but we want to contribute also with the mandate we have to a way that it contributes to a socio-economic and socio-ecological transformation. So I'm convinced that a green hydrogen economy can really have a positive effect on the development of some countries, of some partner countries that have been mentioned. But at the same time, we have the responsibility to unfold those potentials. We've just mentioned there is an interest and there are political frameworks given, so it becomes really important that we do not only look at the CO2 neutrality, but that it is in a just way that includes also benefiting the people and having a look at a local value chain as well, and consider that in the whole discussions as well. And happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhanja, for your intro. Then let's go to the business sector, and we start with Europe, talking about Equinor, situated in Norway. So please, Ulrik, your intro.
Thank you very much, and good morning all. Thank you for the invitation to be here at the Hydrogen Forum in Berlin. So I'm from Equinor, Norwegian-based oil and gas company with a very ambitious net zero target by 2050. We have 260 million tons, scope 1, 2, and 3, so it's a daunting challenge. So we do everything. We do renewables, we do hydrogen, and we do CCS. Hydrogen in both colors, blue and green. We have 3 decades of experience from carbon capture and sequestration on the Norwegian continental shelf. We know it's safe. So we want to develop carbon storage as a service, taking volumes from Europe through a pipeline to Norway. We also see that we can use that experience to develop blue hydrogen in Norway, and at the scale that allows us, necessitates actually, exports to Europe. So I'm project director for Clean Hydrogen to Europe. So our ambition is to produce between 1.5 and 2.5 million tons of hydrogen. So that the high number, that's close to 100 terawatt hours of higher heating value energy, 20 million tons of CO2 captured and stored. And we need the pipeline connection to get this started. And this is the same pipeline that Habeck is talking very warmly about. The good part of such infrastructure is that it can accommodate both blue and green. So offshore wind electrolysis along the route of such infrastructure can more easily be fed into the European and German market. So this is part of the Norwegian-German energy dialogue, and obviously we're working together with a lot of industrial partners in Norway and especially also in Germany. One of the most public ones is our collaboration with RWE on investments in gas-fired power plants, hydrogen-ready, and supply them with hydrogen when the technology and the volumes are available, just to mention one example.
Thank you, Ulrik. We'll come back to this a little bit later. And last but not least, we will hear now Charlotte from Fortescue Future Industries, so originally Australian company, but also very active all over the world and also in Europe. Please, your intro statement, Charlotte.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Yeah, I'm Dr. Charlotte Kirk from Fortescue Future Industries. So Fortescue Future Industries is a wholly owned subsidiary of Fortescue Metals Group, which is the 4th largest iron ore exporter in the world and one of the lowest cost producers around the world. So at Fortescue Future Industries, I lead lots of our science and technology development, but also investment. So there's obviously sort of a lot of partnerships involved in that. But really at FFI, there's 2 things that we do. So firstly, it's decarbonize all of Fortescue Metal Group's Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. We have science-backed target initiative, $6 billion costed roadmap to do that by 2030. So that's Scope 1 and Scope 2 across the iron ore operations. So there's a lot of opportunities for sort of partnerships to do that. You know, it's largely electrification play, and there's also a role for sort of synthetic hydrogen-based fuels. We fully acquired Williams Advanced Engineering in 2021, who have a huge amount of capabilities in battery technologies. They're a spin-out from the Williams Formula One team. And we're working closely with Liebherr to develop battery mining vehicles, and sort of, you know, the batteries have been shipped out to the Pilbara and sort of ready for operation, which is really exciting. But the second part of what we do at FFI is really leveraging the fact that our sort of large-scale project experience from all of our iron ore experience, but also our global footprint, and the fact that we have to get good at making green hydrogen and its derivatives, green ammonia, to decarbonize those Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. So we're developing a global portfolio of projects to produce the equivalent of 15 megatons of green hydrogen and its derivatives by 2030, and we've stated the ambition to take FID on 5 of those projects this year. So as you can see, there's a huge amount of opportunity for partnerships. We like to think that we're sort of pioneering and lead a lot of that ambition and development, but clearly sort of we have our skill set and other people do theirs. So partnerships are really key for us to sort of stimulate and seed the entire industry, because if we're going to reach real zero by 2030, then, you know, everyone has to come on the journey. So something I'm really excited about is sort of selling the story of green hydrogen and green ammonia. My background was in ammonia technology, so it's a particularly exciting area for me. And so I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Yes, thank you very much, Charlotte, to you. So now we will jump in the discussion, and I will start again with you, Jürgen. So I forgot to say that you worked several years for German Trade and Invest as a CEO. So now you came to the ministry last autumn, and one of the first things you have to deal with is import strategy. You tackled a little bit import strategy for Germany to see where we can secure our hydrogen demand. And the import strategy is in the discussion now. So can you say a little bit about what will be the content of this import strategy? Will you highlight some of the countries as favorites, or is it only to have a framework for international corporations? Can you say a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. The import strategy is in the making. It's going to be part, or it's going to be related. It's related to the national hydrogen strategy, which is under revision as well. And to answer your question directly, no, there will be no specific targets for regions, countries, or vectors. But providing a framework for imports is I think, important as well. I think we have to, as an economy embedded in the European market, we have to clearly state that we're going to rely on hydrogen or derivatives. I think this was one of the questions, and I'd like to answer that clearly. We are talking green hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen, or derivatives in general. Now, Germany is relying on imports heavily. 2/3 of our demand has to be bridged by hydrogen or derivative imports by 2030, and I think that this share is going to grow in the long run. Second element of the strategy is going to be, once again, to underline that we are supporting this kind of cooperation with different elements like energy partnerships, but even more specific other forms of support, governmental support. And last but not least, that we have some guidelines in mind which make sure that these imports take into account sustainable development goals, that they really provide a win-win situations for all parties involved, something you mentioned as well. These are the core elements I'd like to point to, but everything else right now is still in the making.
One further question to you. So when you came in, you see a lot of already existing hydrogen agreements, partnerships, the German government. So, you know, our ministers traveling around and signing agreements everywhere, and also the different ministries. And we extended a lot of our energy partnerships to hydrogen partnerships. So what is the point to manage all these partnerships, and who is responsible to manage it? Is it only the economy ministry, or do you have an overview in coordinating all the international corporations about hydrogen?
I would like to ask for at least 20 minutes to specifically answer your question. It's a complicated process, taking into account that some of these partnerships have been established years ago and they have been adapted to deal with hydrogen. Other partnerships just started recently, focusing only on hydrogen. But there is an important element, and I think you were referring to that government agencies and ministry are working more closely together to really make sure that in important partner countries like Morocco, there is really a joint approach of the different agencies and the different instruments. In Canada right now, we have steering committees meeting today in Canada. It's a different story. There we have only the Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action in charge, but looking at the importance of developing countries, there we have an important element of our approach is to jointly deal with the specific demand of these markets. And this is leading to an ever closer cooperation between the Foreign Ministry, BMZ, and BMW UK.
Okay, thank you for the moment, Jürgen. So let's go to you, Maira. So we talked about German corporations now. Can you say a little bit about other international hydrogen alliances, and what is the nature of these alliances, besides of that what Germany is doing at the moment?
Yeah. As World Energy Council, we've been monitoring hydrogen strategies, the development of hydrogen strategies over the past, I would say, 4 to 5 years. And what we found was that in many national strategies, international partnerships have already played an important role right from the start, which makes sense because, as mentioned before, they offer the possibility to jointly develop technologies, to share costs, to establish trade relations. So especially in countries intending to import hydrogen or, on the other hand, to export, for example, Australia, we've seen the development of hydrogen alliances, relationships right from the start. And from the start, I would say from 2020 onwards, when the topic really became a topic of global priority. Depending on the countries and the partnerships, the nature is very different, I would say. There are, of course, sometimes just initial talks about cooperation in the very early stages. Then there are cooperation on pilot projects. Then there are also research partnerships, also the beginning of trade partnerships. So it really depends on the partner, I would say, and also on the interests of partners. We've seen that partnerships in the beginning usually build on bilateral or sometimes also trilateral to regional partnerships, but really bilateral in the beginning, and especially, again, building between countries who want to import, like Germany, and countries who want to export. And on our website, we have an interesting graph on all the bilateral partnerships. And there you can see that Germany has a huge graph. So Germany is by far the country with the most hydrogen partnerships worldwide, which is, I guess, not surprising if you just look at the possible partnerships already or the possible partner countries. And then Germany is followed by South Korea and Japan, also very big countries intending to import. What we've seen in the last couple of months, I would say, is that there has been a more diversification of partnerships. So it's not just import and export countries anymore, but really the beginning of regional partnerships also, and countries who try to develop projects together or to develop infrastructure together. So I think the landscape of international hydrogen partnerships is changing, as is a global market for hydrogen, I would say. And yeah, we've also another graph on our website where we have all these little dots where we have bilateral partnerships between countries and sometimes also regional ones. And it's actually quite interesting to see how it developed over time, because it started with a couple of lines from one country to the other, and now it's just a big web of partnerships, which I find very interesting. If you would like to see it, check it out on our website. And I think that's it for now. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yes, we have seen the poll, the result of the poll. So looking at your observations, from your point of view, German and European perspective, what are the most important partner countries and regions for hydrogen alliances for Germany and Europe, from your point of view?
Yeah, I think it's
Maira.
To some extent, it depends on what is to be imported. You know, are we talking about green hydrogen? Are we talking about blue hydrogen? Are we talking about derivatives? So that's not an easy question to answer. I think in general, well, Germany and the European Union obviously plans to import green, so renewable hydrogen in the long run. So of course, ideal partner countries are countries with a very good potential for the production of renewable energies and then also renewable hydrogen. Ideally, so to say, there are other factors to really consider. Of course, the renewable energy potential is one thing, but then you also have to consider other resources like water. There are huge amounts of water necessary for the production of green hydrogen. Then there's also the question of existing infrastructure, for example, for the production of hydrogen, for transport, pipelines. Then there are also social aspects, like the access of the local population to energy. You know, when we're talking countries in South Africa, for example, also in Latin America, even Asia sometimes, the local population doesn't even have access to electricity. So does it make sense to build a partnership to export green electricity to other regions? Shouldn't, or in terms of or in climate perspective, wouldn't it be more convenient to use it locally? You know, those are very many questions associated with that question. So it's really not easy to answer. I think what is very important in general when we're talking about partnerships is to have a general and holistic view, and always consider hydrogen as part of a bigger energy strategy, I would say, and then really look at the local conditions available.
Yeah, you named a very interesting point, the shifting of value chains in the global hydrogen economy. So from the industrialized countries to the countries with energy supply. So, okay, let's discuss a little bit later maybe. So come to you, Farhanja, to the GIZ, the more worldwide perspective. We have heard already about developing countries. We saw some of them also on the poll. So the first agreement Germany signed, the BMBF, was with Namibia in June 21, only focusing hydrogen. So what potentials exist in the green hydrogen economy in developing and emerging countries, and which ones can we foster within hydrogen alliances? That's my question to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I'm actually just arriving from Namibia, so thanks for that suggestion. We've just seen it, as you also said, that Germany and Europe wants to import from several countries, also the partner countries, especially from those countries where the production cost of renewable energy is attractive and low. And in a lot of countries like Namibia, like South Africa, Brazil, to mention some, this condition is giving. At the same time, we have the hypothesis that that it also benefits, can benefit the economy in the partner countries. And so why? Because it can lead to job creation, it can lead to economic growth, it can lead to energy independency. So all these factors makes it also very attractive. And that is why we also within the Business Alliance have looked into that hypothesis and checked whether and how do the a green hydrogen economy benefit the development or the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we found was very interesting. First of all, and of course it's a model, and it's based on an SDG model by the Millennium Institute we worked with, and it has, of course, its limits, but what it showed was that it has no negative impact or effect on inequalities, on poverty. It also showed rather that it has a positive effect on the SDG performance. It increases it by 2050 by 2%. Especially SDGs when it comes to access to energy, to water, to climate, to growth. All these SDGs were quite benefiting from a possible hydrogen economy. And now comes the but. But there needs some interventions. The certain regulations are necessary. I think you've talked about it yesterday, and we'll talk about it today, about certification system, carbon taxes, but also policies when it comes to other regulations. You need skilled laborers and all these aspects which still need support. And that's why if we want to unfold the potential of, for example, in Brazil, we've calculated a decrease of unemployment rate until 2050 by 10%. If we really want to unfold that potential, we need to look into that. And that is why we need also these alliances, why it's so important to discuss also these aspects.
I've been to Mauritania 4 weeks ago, one of the poorest countries in the world, but announced hydrogen projects of 85 gigawatt next 20 years. So a lot of companies were there, Shell and whatever. So what do you think when you look on that? So is it talking about level playing field, fair level playing field? Is it possible to develop these big projects without the World Bank or any financial support of international financial economy?
Yeah. Well, the private sector entered that project and they finance it. But at the same time, a lot of private-driven projects, they do not have maybe the experience to see the complexity in a country like Mauritania, where it is probably a bit more tricky when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to, again, skilled labor, the legislation. So yes, I think it is important for a certain phase if there is certain cooperation on that field, just to support also the partner countries to address those challenges.
Do you have specific countries you think the development will be faster than other countries? We talked about Namibia. They have now this Hyphen project with a 10 billion funding, so surely first movers in Africa. What do you have some countries also from your GIZ perspective which are in the front from your point of view?
Yeah, I would rather go the direction like Maria and do not confirm a certain countries, and also Jürgen just said that because at the moment it's quite tricky. We do not know it. The market is just establishing. Well, we know that the competitive advantage of industrial countries is there, and they have maybe more access to finance, to investment. They have more access to research, to the technology. So these makes the disadvantage for some of the partner countries we work with. And that's why it's so crucial to support and really reach a common level, a playing field here together to give also those countries the opportunity to compete. You mentioned also Namibia. Namibia has the potential to, for example, until 2030 to reach cost parity of green ammonia between green ammonia and gray ammonia. But we've seen it, there is no infrastructure at all. The local acceptance is a big issue. And so a lot of private companies are underestimating probably also that.
What I do have, the only deep sea harbor on the west coast, African west coast. That's why Namibia is also that interesting. Okay, let's change to the private sector, to you, Ulrik. So from the political view to the company view, what is the biggest obstacle from your point of view to realize all our big ambitions in Europe for import and developing this hydrogen economy?
Oh, that's also a very big question. So all of the above, I would say. The most important thing is security of demand. We know that we can produce hydrogen, be it in Namibia or in Norway or elsewhere. We see a lot of projections about demand, but that demand is basically back solving the climate issue. For us in the private sector, Habeck will not buy hydrogen from us. It's German industries that will buy hydrogen, hopefully, and it needs to be affordable. So the long and complex value chain starts with customer offtake in the hundreds and thousands of tons scale. So nothing against mobility, but the volumes are nearly not enough to build the infrastructure that is needed to support those contracts. And at these conferences, there's a lot of producers, there's a lot of infrastructure operators, but there is very seldom the big industrial players wanting to buy hydrogen. We are in dialogue with them bilaterally, and that is the key to be able to negotiate commercial terms, and there is a lack of money. Hydrogen is more costly than natural gas with ETS prices still, will be so for many years. Green has the potential to depreciate in price, but it starts at a very high level. And a lot of these decisions, they need to take place simultaneously. So you need to take the FID on the production plant, you need to take FID on the infrastructure part, the importing terminals, the hydrogen storage was mentioned. I think hydrogen storage is not technically difficult, but you need a lot of storage. The same storage is needed for natural gas for quite a bit still. So even if this works in an Excel sheet, it needs to stick in all the different boards taking the investments. And even though we want to be risk takers, there's a limit to how much risk a private company can take on it. It needs to be an expected return on this. So the politicians, they're creating the framework. But again, Habeck will never buy a single kilo of hydrogen from Norway. It's German industries that will have to buy, and they need to be able to afford the cost of the transition.
Yeah, a very interesting point. Infrastructure already named by Maira. So you are in contact, I think that's public, with ThyssenKrupp Steel as a big off-taker. So there we have a pipeline from Rotterdam. It's not so long, but we have a lot of other possible off-takers. And then we have to talk about infrastructures, about import corridors, and you talked about the pipeline from Norway. So I'm happy that we are also talking about hydrogen pipelines and not only about CO2 pipelines back to the North Sea. But how is your point of view? We need international agreements, we need cooperation, we need a German industry, we need a German government. Do you also cooperate in your idea of a pipeline from the North Sea back to Germany with other let me say, Celtic countries like Scotland, like Ireland, with a lot of offshore potential. Okay, you are now talking for Equinor, I know, not for Norway. But anyway, do you have an idea? Is it necessary to cooperate also with other Nordic countries on a political level and also on a company level to realize this pipeline? It's about 15 billion investment, I guess.
I mean, the pipeline that I'm working on, and that's not as costly as that because it's from Norway to Germany, base case now being Wilhelmshaven. It's a very long distance to Scotland. So we are working and we have a PCI application showing the full value chain from Western Norway down to Germany and into the neighboring countries and further down south in Germany. So working together with reputable TSOs on that and showcasing that if you're able to do the investments in a concerted manner, we can have the infrastructure in place, but of course it's quite costly. So we are looking more to the south. Sweden has its hydrogen ambitions, but it's mostly for domestic steel production. So and it's far up north in Sweden, so that's not likely to be exported to Germany anytime soon. And the green hydrogen from Norway, that will take probably a couple of decades. We are also running in a deficit of power for our own decarbonization. So we need to be able to scale up offshore electrolysis capacity along the route of such an infrastructure. So I wouldn't mind Scotland tying into our pipeline, but I don't see it happen. It's really far distances, and it will add more cost than it will give volumetric input to the pipeline, as I see it today.
Okay, thank you. Charlotte, so coming to Fortescue Industries, you're developing a lot of projects, also in Latin America, for example. So which are the countries from your point of view where you have the most progress so far? What are the most interesting countries for the first projects of producing, let's say, renewable hydrogen? And what role does policy play in your projects and the political support?
Yeah, thank you. So I agree with what everyone's saying. You know, each country has their merits, be it renewable energy generation capacity, existing infrastructure, demand, policy incentives, you know, and all of those play a role as to which countries are attractive. The launch of the IRA and the sort of American ambition is clearly sort of world leading, and you know, a lot of our projects will likely be in America because of those incentives. But that's not to say that other countries aren't stepping up. You know, we have the Hydrogen Head Start program from Australia. And, you know, as industry, we're proud members of various coalitions, you know, the First Movers Coalition, the Green Hydrogen Catapult, the Ammonia Energy Association, the Green Hydrogen Organization, but we really do work closely with governments and sort of help them understand the policy implications from a global country's perspective, and, you know, what the implications are in terms of how different policies stack up and which countries are therefore more attractive for production, for offtake. You know, like we've heard already, it doesn't make sense perhaps to export when there's local opportunities, when ultimately that, you know, avoiding the transmission cost, the transportation cost, both money and carbon emissions, ultimately, you know, what we're trying to do is save the planet, not necessarily ship things around the world. So, you know, those local opportunities, again, country-specific. Some places might need hydrogen, some will need derivatives, ammonia, green hydrogen for green steel production. And really sort of the ability for countries that, it's fortuitous, a lot of countries like Namibia, Mauritania, that have these really available, low-cost, highly abundant renewable electricity, can really use that to invigorate their domestic, you know, GDP, bring manufacturing to the country, jobs, foreign investment. And so, you know, all of those opportunities are really attractive. But I think the other thing that we see is from a global company's perspective is how these policies align, and something that, international certification of these green products is going to be crucial. What you're actually buying isn't necessarily the hydrogen or the molecule, the derivative. It's really the carbon savings that it can provide. And so having a transparent and trackable, traceable, internationally recognized, maybe mutually compatible certification scheme and methodology behind it is really crucial for sort of the bona fide credentials of those low carbon renewable fuels sort of to be accounted for properly and ultimately reduce CO2 emissions to the planet. So, policy is key. At the moment, green hydrogen and its derivatives are generally not cost competitive with fossil alternatives. And so there's two ways to sort of overcome that cost gap. It's either artificially through policy incentives, which is really key to get the market moving, the IRA, the Net Zero Industry Act, the Hydrogen Bank, carbon contracts for difference like the H2 Global would play in a massive role. But, technology innovation is also key to sort of fundamentally decrease the cost gap as electrolyzer efficiencies decrease, efficiencies increase, and CapEx decrease. But also, the development of new sort of disruptive technologies that fill known gaps, ammonia cracking, for example, electrochemical solutions. So really, we see those two levers working in parallel, policy incentives as well as technology and development, so that in the long term, renewable fuels based purely on sort of renewable electricity, zero carbon green solutions are truly the most economic solution. And we really see, at Fortescue, that will be profitable for our shareholders. We're doing this not only for the environment, but also because of the economic benefits that we see. So we encourage people to join us on the journey, collaborate, be partners, and join us on the journey. So, please reach out.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Andrew Forrest is still a very important player, a global player in the hydrogen economy.
Yes, exactly.
So we have another 4 to 5 minutes, and the two most rated questions go to you, Jürgen, so maybe you can answer them together. Will German regulations allow for blue hydrogen imports to Germany considered to be clean hydrogen? I think that's easy to answer. And also the second question, do we expect some guidelines on prioritization of H2 usage in Germany? You have half a minute.
The first question answer is yes. In line with the EU regulations, there will be a way to take low carbon hydrogen into account, but still what you mentioned is a crucial question. Certification of imports in whatever shape or form is going to be a crucial factor, and unfortunately the timing right now is not working well between national governments and the European Commission, and there's even an element of the international level. And yes, there will be some guidelines on prioritizing of the I should avoid this word. Prioritization of hydrogen usage in Germany, yes. And actually, as we are just here in a confidential framework, this is one of the reasons why the national hydrogen strategy is still under construction. The revision is dealing with the question in what sectors we should focus mainly the usage of green hydrogen or derivatives. An example has already mentioned several times, that would be hydrogen in the steel production. There is a looming question to what extent we allow for the utilization of hydrogen in the heating sector. This is still, I think, an important element of the hydrogen strategy to make sure that we have the right framework to make sure that we stay competitive in what is going to remain in Germany as the core of industrial production, but keep it open to new and to new technologies. This is, I think, not a contradiction, but it's actually one of the balancing acts we have to deal with as a government. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One question is for you, Farhanja. Right now, H2 is considered the green solution. How to deal with the negative impacts which might lead the future discussions, energy efficiency, water need. So we talked about water already when I negotiated the agreement with Namibia. The water topic was the main problem. So we had to talk about desalinated water for the local consumption before we talk for the usage for hydrogen production.
Yeah. So actually green hydrogen and PTX products is just one element and one pillar. We should not forget, I think it's not the solution. It is one of a lot of solutions. So renewable energies, access to water, and all these developments are first needed before we really go into the development of a green hydrogen economy and industry, even in those countries. And that's also why the standards also for, I think, H2 Global are set so high. Social and environmental standards are so important, and that's why they also have to look into those aspects as well.
Thank you. Maybe one last question. How important is to secure infrastructure development at non-EU countries as a strategy to achieve successful international hydrogen alliances? Maybe to the industry or to you, Maira.
Well, I mean, can you hear me? Yes? Okay, sorry. Well, there are, of course, always, if we're talking about imports, exports, there are always two sides. So if Germany is the one importing, then of course it's very important to have the necessary infrastructure in the partner country. So from a very general point of view, so I think it's very important, and there it leads back to the question of investments, necessary investments, and international hydrogen partnerships can be a very good opportunity to share those costs, as they're, as they're very good or very beneficial for both sides. Yeah.
Charlotte or Ulrik, some additional
No, I
remarks?
totally agree. And one of the big challenges with infrastructure is you will only use a fraction of the capacity in the beginning. So it's a massive investment in overcapacity, and it's difficult for private companies to actually burden that kind of upfront investment. So that the states should contribute to de-risk the investments, because otherwise we would end up with a very small pipeline, fit for purpose for my projects, but it will not allow my green colleagues to feed into the same pipeline. And they are looking for that pipeline, but they don't necessarily have the money either to de-risk it. So their states need to see their opportunity to lubricate the investments in infrastructure.
Thank you. Maybe the last word to you, Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, and that's, I think, why we're seeing a lot of these projects being sort of consortiums, in that, you know, it's an upstream renewable generator, it's a hydrogen producer, a derivative producer, a shipper potentially, and crucially driven by that offtake of that industry that needs to decarbonize. Ultimately investing in the whole supply chain and the whole value chain, because, you know, what we're trying to do is grow this renewable hydrogen industry from nothing. And so while we in this room might think it's sort of very clear what the path forward is, in reality we have a long way to go. And so, you know, we need everyone to be on the journey and move at pace as well. That's the thing. You know, these large-scale infrastructure investments require a lot of money and take a long period of time, and, you know, we really need to start doing this yesterday if we're going to do it in any way fast enough.
Yes, so think big, act fast. That's what I'm always saying when I'm talking about hydrogen economy. So thank you very much. Our time is out already for your very interesting observations and insights, and thank you very much to my panelists here. Thank you.